Very busy day for Jimmy Johnson already. Remember, he worked hard yesterday to pick up 8 picks today. He's been active in the war room all morning long on the phone. Could be trading up. Doubt that he'll trade down. Remember, he was the architect. There he is right there, conversing with everybody, including his coaching staff. Remember, he's the architect of the 3-time Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys. This is the day he does his best work. And speaking of the Cowboys, let's go to Chris Myers.
Chris, the Cowboys only have 3 draft choices today. Yesterday, they addressed depth needs on the defensive line, offensive line, and at wide receiver. They'll be looking for a fullback sometime today. Darrell Johnston, a free agent after this season. They'd like to address that area. We'll keep an eye on things in the war room as the Cowboys do not have a pick here in the 4th round. Let's now go to Sal Paolantonio.
Chris, I'm at Ravens headquarters. Baltimore does not have a pick in the 4th round. Expect Director of Football Operations, Ozzie Newsome, to try to move up, maybe get a linebacker. He's also looking for a running back and definitely a tight end. Let's go to Andrea Kramer.
The Bucs have 5 picks today, including the #1 selection this morning. Of course, they're listening to Trey Talk. They have to do that. But there's a certain offensive lineman that they'd like to take with that #1 pick. Let's go to Chris Fowler now.
And here in the studio, we'll get the inside of Mike Lombardi, veteran of several war rooms in Cleveland. He'll explain or attempt to explain the reasoning behind many of the trades at work today. And our primetime analyst, Mike Godfrey, will talk about some of the sliders on Saturday who will become steals on Sunday. A lot of good players you can get cheap and then bring along, still available. Now back to New York, and Mike Tirico, what do you have for us?
Chris, thank you. Mark Malone is also joining us here at Draft headquarters in New York. Here's Val Pinchback, the Senior Vice President of Broadcasting for the NFL.
Welcome to Game 2, yes. Welcome to Day 2 of the NFL Draft as we begin Round 4. The selections will be 5 minutes for each choice. The first selection is by Tampa Bay on a selection obtained from the New York Jets. Tampa Bay on the clock.
Tampa is on the clock. Remember, the Jets were the #1 pick in each round yesterday. That's not the case here because they traded this first pick in round 4, number 96 overall. Traded it for Charles Wilson, the wide receiver last year. Mel, how did the Bucs do yesterday?
Well, they did a great job on the first day. You look at Reagan Upshaw. He's the pass rusher. Then you complement him with a stay-at-home type defensive tackle in Marcus Jones, and they're going to a split backfield. All they have is the veteran Tracy Johnson to work with Eric Rett. Now they bring in Mike Allstott, who's a Darrell Johnson with a little bit more running ability. Donnie Abraham, I thought, was a little bit of a reach.
We talked about possibly offensive linemen. Here are some of the tackles still left.
Yeah, some good ones. Jason Odom, I think, is an outstanding football player at Florida. Runyon can play guard or tackle. Hunter Goodwin, also versatile, a former tight end. Jimmy Herndon, of course, at Houston. And Jeff Bucky, a kid at Stanford, also can play guard or tackle. Even going down the line, you have a Keith Conlon at Penn State.
Tampa Bay's picks yesterday, day 1 of the Tony Dungy draft era, started out with mostly defensive players. 3 out of the first 4 picks. No surprise there.
Being a defensive coach in the NFC Central, and he knows that if he wants to win the division, he's going to have to go through Green Bay, and he's going to have to stop that the West Coast offense. And Tony Dungy has those linemen, defensive linemen that are a little bit undersized, and the defensive players get after you. They're going to protect Hardy Nickerson, who loves to make big hits. I think he did a very good job yesterday.
Just make a point here as we wait for the Buccaneers selection. You will see on the screen as we go along, going this way. Yeah, this way, that's right. All the picks by team, not by number of selection. And when there's a pick during the draft, if we're off talking about another topic, you'll see it. As soon as the pick happens, it'll flash current selection and the player taken. Let's bring in Chris Fowler and company back in Connecticut. Chris.
Mike, thanks. I want to ask Mike Lombardi here about the strategy on day 2. Why keep a pick at the top of round 4 versus trade down? What would a team be looking to do if they want to deal out of their spot here?
Well, last night the teams put together most of the players that they really think are going to be there for them, that they like, and they've got a group of players. If they feel they can trade back and still get one of those players, they'll trade back and make the pick. If they only have one player they like at this point, then they'll make the pick.
We're talking about the importance of having skilled people in player development here. You talk about 72% of the players taken in rounds 4 through 7 being on rosters at the end of the year, as Mike Tirico mentioned. A lot of those guys are on the roster because they're a bargain, but also you have to have coaches who you trust can bring them along.
And I think that's why Jimmy's excited about today. I mean, good coaches that can bring players along, develop players. You know, even though they're inexpensive, they can eventually work into starting jobs, and I think this is really an important day for player development.
All right, the guys who slid yesterday have waited all night, disappointed, but are steals today. Give me your top 5.
Well, I think Marcus Coleman from Texas Tech's a versatile safety. I think he can play some corner, can play inside, so I think he's obviously an attractive guy. Richard Hundley, one of the all-time leading rushers in high high school and in college is a very attractive player because he can play fullback and halfback. Donnie Edwards, a multidimensional linebacker, play runner pass. Darryl Price is an interesting player. Came back from reconstructed knee surgery, who played very well in the Hula Bowl. If he's cleared medically, I think he'll be somebody to look for. And Chris Sullivan, a hard-nosed defensive tackle who plays very well. Defensive linemen now are at a premium. You've got to try to get one.
In large part, these are guys who may be injury gambles or tweeners in NFL terms. Mike Godfrey will give us his Sunday steals coming up in a little while. But now down to Tampa and Andrea Kramer. Andrea?
Well, Chris, as we can see, the Bucs are on the line right now. They said that they would have to entertain draft offers. Jerry Angelo just put the phone down. Rich McKay, the general manager, told me he's 98% sure that they would take tackle Jason Odom from Florida. He played left tackle in college, but they would project him at right tackle, and he is the player that they would take if they choose not to trade down. The biggest need is offensive line, and Odom would feel a definite need for them. Chris, let's go back to Mike Tirico in New York.
Okay, Andrea, thank you. And Jason Odom, his upside would obviously be, here's someone who's blocked in a very pass-oriented scheme. So if you are going to continue to pass the ball with Trent Dilfer, it's someone who's very familiar with pass protecting against high-caliber player in the SEC.
No question. He was one of the 3 players on my top 40 board still available, Mike. I think when you look at Jason Odom, people think finesse when you think Florida, and that's not the case. At the Hula Bowl practices, I know George Perlis, Mike Godfrey were tremendously impressed with the all-around ability of a Jason Odom. We know he can pass block, but he can get after you. He's got an attitude. He's strong, and he's going to get bigger, and when he gets in the weight room, he's even going to have more power. I think Jason Odom at this stage of the game is a ultimate steal, almost a grand larceny pick.
All right, Bucs took all the time. Let's find out their selection to start round 4 of the draft.
Tampa Bay, on a choice obtained from the New York Jets, select Jason Odom, tackle, University of Florida. Jason Odom, tackle, University of Florida. Arizona Cardinals on the clock.
Jim Stieg, who is the vice president of special events for the NFL, will be announcing many of the picks. So let's look at Jason Odom.
Yeah, he's well-rounded. Watch for Jason Odom. You see 290, he could be 305, 310 very easily. He's not finished growing yet. You watch him here at left tackle. This is against Reagan Upshaw in the Hula Bowl. See, it's a speed rusher now. You see the good, strong base, the ability to keep his frame between the defensive end and the quarterback. Watch him here. Has some explosive qualities, pancakes the defender. That's what I think is the misconception about Odom. He's not finesse. He does have the ability. This is against another quick outside pass rusher, Noga from Hawaii. Watch this play. This will give you an idea of the tenacity that this kid has. Watch him crack back here. Watch this. Now that's a football player. That's why Jason Odom, I think, is a steal at this point in the draft.
So Jason Odom goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to start round 4 of the NFL draft. In addition, for the Bucs, let's bring in Andrea Kramer as she joins us back from Bucs headquarters. Andrea.
Yes, well, we just saw Tony Dungy on the phone with his new offensive lineman, and now we have the coach in the flesh with us. Thanks a lot for... I want you to know he ran in here. We're watching him on the War Room cam. Your 40 time is not where it should be. Why Jason Odom? Certainly tackle was a priority. Why this guy?
Well, it was. We talked earlier today, offensive line we had to address, and we just felt that Jason was the best guy on the board at the time. We had some trade possibilities with a couple of other teams. We talked about a couple of other positions, but we're happy with him, and it went right down to the wire, but we think it was a good pick for us.
Who was most anxious to move up? We understand that Wheeler Dealer Jimmy down in Miami was one of the guys calling.
Well, we had some calls from quite a few teams, and I don't know that it's right to say who was ready to move up, but that first pick on the second day, a lot of people always want it, and we anticipated some calls, and we got some, but we had a conviction on Jason, and we stuck with it. 4
more picks today, including 1 more in this round. What are your goals today? What do you want to come out of today with?
Well, the offensive line was a priority that had not been addressed on the first day, and now I think we're going to just look to fill in with the best players available. We don't have a real desperate need anywhere, so we'll just really kind of go down our board and take the best players that are there.
All right, Coach, thank you. You can walk back to the War Room now.
No, we got another pick.
All right, now let's go to Sal Paolantonio in Baltimore.
Thanks, Andrea. Arizona is now on the clock. They needed offensive line help as well, and probably like Jason Odom, since he was very high on a lot of people's draft board. But they had a strange day yesterday. They didn't really take picks that suited their need. They took Simeon Rice, a defensive end / linebacker. They took Leland McElroy, and a lot of people are wondering now what they will do with Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons, since they asked both of them to restructure their contracts, in fact, take pay cuts. I talked to Jim Solano this morning, the agent for both Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner, who said they are not going to take pay cuts, and why should they? Clyde Simmons had 11 sacks last year. Seth Joyner played strong safety for the team last year, and